I'd been at the coffee shop longer than I meant to be. My laptop was open, but the screen had gone dark half an hour ago. I kept staring past it, to the street outside, where cars slowed at the light, headlights glowing against the glass. I told myself I liked the place because it stayed open late. Really, it was because she sometimes came in. She wasn't supposed to be part of my world. My best friend's stepmom, mid-40s, composed in that way that made everyone else in the room feel too young or too rushed. She carried herself like she didn't need anyone to notice her, which only made it impossible not to. Tonight, she walked in just as I was thinking of leaving. A cold gust followed her through the door, her hair pushed slightly out of place. She smoothed it down with her hand, not even glancing around, like she belonged there more than anyone. "Still here?" Her voice was low, more observation than question. "Yeah." I nudged my laptop closed. "Pretending to study?" Her mouth curved. Not a smile exactly, closer to something she might not even know she was doing. "You always order the same thing, don't you? Medium drip, splash of cream. Easy to remember." She moved past me to the counter. I watched her place her order, small latte, no sugar. She leaned one hand on the counter while waiting, nails short, no polish. My eyes caught there longer than they should have. When she turned back, she noticed. Or maybe she always noticed. "You don't look much like a kid anymore," she said. It was nothing, just words thrown out while she picked up her drink. But something in my chest tightened. I didn't know if she meant it, or if it was the kind of thing people said when they'd known you too long. I laughed, but too lightly. "I'm 23. Not sure if that counts as grown." "Grown enough," she said, almost to herself, before taking a sip. We sat at separate tables. Not too far, close enough that I could hear the sound of her cup meeting the saucer, the rustle of her coat sleeve against the chair. We didn't talk much. That was the strange part. I didn't need us to. The silence filled itself, steady and unforced. I pulled out my phone, typed a message I'd never sent. "Do you ever think about me the way I think about you?" Then I locked the screen and set it face down. She caught me staring again. Instead of looking away, she held my gaze for a beat too long. Then she reached across to my table, pulled the folded napkin I hadn't touched, and placed it by her cup as though it had belonged to her all along. "Always wasting these," she murmured. It was nothing, again. Except it wasn't. By the time she stood to leave, the air outside had shifted, the street quieter, the coffee shop nearly empty. She paused at the door, coat half-buttoned, scarf loose around her neck. "You should stop by sometime," she said. The words dropped casually, but her eyes didn't move from mine. "House feels empty these days." Then she was gone, leaving me staring at the reflection of the street lights in the window, wondering if I'd imagined it. On my phone, a new text lit the screen. Her name. 4 words, "Come in tomorrow evening." I didn't open it right away. My thumb hovered above the glass, the way it always did with the messages I wasn't sure I deserved. And still, I couldn't look away. The text stayed on my screen all night. I didn't answer. I told myself it was nothing, just a polite invitation, the kind you could brush off without hurting anyone. Still, I kept the phone face down on the nightstand, like it was watching me. By the next evening, I was standing outside her house. Porch light on, faint glow through the curtains. I could have turned back. My best friend was across town, probably playing video games in his room, never imagining where I was. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised. More like she'd been expecting me for hours. "You came," she said simply. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and tea. It was quiet in the way places are after a long day, the kind of silence that pressed at the edges of every sound. She handed me a mug. "Chamomile." "You don't drink coffee this late, do you?" "No. I wouldn't sleep." Her laugh was soft, The kind that didn't reach the surface all the way. Me either. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. She had pulled her hair back, a few strands falling loose. I found myself watching her fingers trace the rim of her mug, circling it as if keeping time with some unspoken thought. My son's out with friends, she said finally. He doesn't stay home much anymore. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything. I remember when he was little, he'd bring you over. You were always the polite one. Always saying thank you, carrying your own plate to the sink. She gave me a small look, somewhere between fond and searching. Now look at you. Not a kid anymore. The words landed heavier than they should have. I wanted to answer, but the silence felt safer, so I let it stretch. I sipped my tea instead. Do you miss it? When things were fuller here? Her gaze dropped. Sometimes. But it's easier to miss a house than a person. She didn't explain, and I didn't ask. The line stayed with me anyway. I thought about what it meant to sit here, in this chair, knowing my best friend had grown up in the same kitchen. It felt wrong. It also felt like the only place I wanted to be. We fell quiet again. The clock ticked above the stove. She reached for the sugar but didn't add any, just turned the spoon once in her tea before setting it down. I caught myself imagining what it would be like if I stayed too long, if I leaned across the table, if she didn't pull away. Instead, she reached out lightly, brushing the back of my hand as though moving something from the table. Tea bag string, she said, almost smiling. But her touch lingered half a second too long, enough to burn through my skin in a way no tea ever could. I didn't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next time I saw her wasn't planned. I was leaving my car out front when she stepped onto the porch, a basket of laundry balanced against her hip. The late afternoon sun caught in her hair, and for a second it felt like I'd walked into the wrong life. You're always around, she said. Not accusing. Just noticing. Guess so. I shoved my keys into my pocket. She hesitated, then nodded toward the door. You've got a minute? Inside, the house was warmer than last time, lived in a way that felt different when her son wasn't there. A sweater tossed on the couch, half-finished book by the armrest. She set the laundry down and poured 2 glasses of water without asking. We sat in the living room. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Do you ever think about how fast it goes? One day they're kids and then… She cut herself off. Shook her head. I wanted to tell her I thought about it all the time. Not kids growing up, her. How fast I'd gone from seeing her as just his mom to something else entirely. But the words stayed caught in my throat. Her phone buzzed on the table. My friend's name on the screen. She silenced it without answering. You should get that, I said. Not right now. She pushed the phone away, eyes fixed on the glass in her hands. Something in my chest tightened. If he walked in, if anyone did, it would all shatter. I shifted closer, not meaning to. My knee brushed hers. She didn't move. Just breathed, steady but slower than before. You shouldn't, she whispered. Or maybe it was for herself. I pulled back, the air thick between us. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted, half to her, half to the room. For the first time, she looked directly at me, really looked. Not the polite glance of an adult humoring someone younger. It was sharper, heavier, like she wanted to see where the line was and whether I'd cross it. The front door rattled. Voices outside. A neighbor passing by, keys jingling. We both froze, as if the whole house might give us away. When the noise faded, she exhaled. This is complicated. I nodded, though it wasn't enough. My hand was still resting on the couch, inches from hers. The kind of space that begged to be closed. Her fingers twitched, like she might bridge it. Like she might not. We sat there, caught in a silence that felt louder than any argument. I leaned forward, just slightly, enough to catch the faint smell of her perfume, the warmth of her breath. She didn't move away. But she didn't move closer either. And in that pause, longer than it should have been, shorter than I wanted, the moment slipped out we ended up walking together, though either of us planned it. I'd run into her outside the corner store, and somehow the small talk carried us down the street, both holding paper bags that crinkled too loud in the still air. It was evening. A thin wind moved the leaves, carried the smell of rain that hadn't yet come. She stopped at a bench near the park, set her bag down, and sat. I joined her, though my chest was already tight with the quiet between us. "You're quieter than usual," she said. I shrugged. "Don't have much to say." "That's not true." She didn't look at me when she said it. Her hand rested against the wood slat, close to mine. Too close. I tried to keep my eyes on the streetlights flickering on, but the words slipped out before I could catch them. "Do you ever think this feels wrong?" Her head turned slowly. "Wrong or dangerous? I don't know the difference." She studied me for a long time, like she wanted to memorize my face before answering. "You think I don't ask myself the same thing?" Something inside me shifted. It wasn't relief. More like fear, knowing she felt it too. "You're my son's friend," she added softer. "I shouldn't even—" She trailed off, pressing her lips together. Jealousy caught me off guard then, sharp, sudden. I imagined her with someone else, someone her age, someone who could sit here without shame. My chest ached at the thought. "You're not with anyone," I said, too blunt. She flinched. "And if I was?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. The thought of her saying yes, that she had someone, felt unbearable. Her voice broke the silence. "I don't let people close anymore. It's easier. Cleaner." A pause. "But then you—" The unfinished words hung there. I gripped the edge of the bench, knuckles white. I wanted to tell her everything. That she was the first person who made me feel seen in years. That I thought about her voice when I couldn't sleep. That sometimes I typed messages I'd never send. Instead, all I managed was, "I don't know how to stop." Her breath caught, the smallest sound. She turned away, staring at the dark stretch of park. The wind moved her hair across her cheek, and she didn't brush it back. We sat there, the streetlight humming above us, our hands almost touching but not. She whispered, barely audible, "What happens if we don't?" I had no answer. Only the question itself, hanging between us like a weight. The next few days I didn't see her. Not at the cafe. Not outside the house. Even her car stayed parked in the same spot, like time had stopped around her. I told myself it didn't matter. That it was better this way. But I kept catching myself walking past her street, glancing toward her windows, waiting for a flicker of light. Finally, I saw her in the grocery store. She was standing by the fruit section, testing an apple for ripeness. When she noticed me, her whole body stiffened. "Hey," I said. Too casual. "Hi." Her voice was flat, clipped at the edges. It wasn't like before. She didn't ask how I was, didn't move closer. Just set the apple down and picked up another like I wasn't even there. "You okay?" I asked. She gave the smallest smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "I've been busy." That was it. No explanation, no warmth. The distance felt deliberate. I wanted to push, to ask what had changed, but the words jammed in my throat. Instead, I nodded and walked away, pretending I had somewhere else to be. That night, I almost texted her. Did I do something? My thumb hovered over send. I erased it. Typed again, "I don't understand." Deleted that too. In the end, I left the screen blank. The silence stretched through the week. I stayed away from her street, but my mind didn't. I replayed every word, every glance. Had I crossed too close? Did she regret the park, the touch, the question? Then one evening, my friend mentioned something in passing. Mom's ex has been hanging around again. I think they've been talking. I froze. Tried to laugh it off. Really? Yeah. He came by last weekend. Weird, right? I nodded, but inside, everything folded in on itself. An ex-someone she didn't mention. Someone who had history in that house, who had the right to sit at that kitchen table without guilt. Suddenly her distance made sense. Maybe she'd decided it was easier to pull back, to let the past reclaim her instead of risking whatever this was with me. Still, it didn't stop the ache. I thought about knocking on her door that night, about asking her outright. But the porch light was off, curtains drawn. I stood at the edge of her driveway too long, hands in my pockets, heart hammering like I was trespassing. In the end, I turned away. Walking back, I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. On my phone, an unsent draft sat waiting. If you wanted me to stay away, you only had to say so. I didn't send it. I just let it sit there, heavy as stone. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if she'd ever answer, even if I did. I hadn't planned to see her again. But one evening, walking home, I noticed her porch light was on for the first time in weeks. Something pulled me up the steps before I could think it through. My hand hovered above the door, almost knocking. Then the door opened on its own. She stood there, hair pulled back, sweater sleeves pushed up. She looked tired, but not surprised. You were just going to stand out there? She asked. Maybe. Her mouth tilted, half a smile, half something else. Come in. The kitchen was dim except for the light above the sink. A kettle hissed softly on the stove. She poured 2 mugs without asking, set one in front of me. For a while, either of us said anything. Just the sound of tea cooling, of her stirring hers without tasting. Finally, she spoke. I thought pulling away would make it easier. Cleaner. I looked at her. She wasn't meeting my eyes, staring instead at the swirl in her cup. Did it? Her laugh was small, cracked at the edges. No. Something loosened in my chest, but the weight didn't lift completely. I heard about your ex, I said quietly. She flinched, then set her spoon down too hard. That's nothing. A pause. That's me falling back into old habits. Silence again. Heavy. I forced myself to speak before I lost the nerve. I kept thinking maybe I imagined it. That I wanted something that wasn't there. Now she looked at me, direct, unguarded. You didn't. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had shifted closer. She leaned back, folding her arms as though bracing herself. But what do we do with it? You're younger. My son's friend. This doesn't fit anywhere. I know. The words came out rougher than I meant. But I can't just unfeel it. Her hands dropped to the table, palms open. Vulnerable. Neither can I. The confession sat between us, quiet but undeniable. I reached for my mug, but my fingers brushed hers instead. Neither of us moved away. The touch wasn't much, just skin against skin, but it felt heavier than any kiss could have been. We sat like that, not pretending anymore. Her eyes softened, something almost like relief passing through them. She exhaled, slow, and gave the smallest nod. Okay, she whispered. That was all. No promises. No grand declarations. Just that one word, enough to hold the weight of everything we couldn't say out loud. And for the first time in weeks, the silence between us felt like an answer. It didn't happen all at once. That night in her kitchen wasn't some turning point that rewrote everything. Life kept moving the way it always does, messy, uneven, ordinary. But the silences changed. They weren't heavy anymore. I started showing up at her place in small, unremarkable ways. Fixing the leaky faucet. Carrying in groceries. Drinking tea at the kitchen table while she read. Sometimes I stayed late enough to catch her son coming home, and we fell back into the old rhythm, me and him laughing about nothing while she stood in the doorway, half smiling like she knew more than she said. We never called it anything. That seemed safer. But there was a steadiness in the way she set a mug out for me now, even before I arrived. Black coffee for me, tea for her. One morning, weeks later, I passed her on the sidewalk near the park. Same bench, the one where everything nearly tipped over. She sat with her bag of groceries resting at her feet, watching the streetlights flicker off with the sunrise. "Too early for you," I teased. She tilted her head. "Not for you. It's 8:47, isn't it?" The fact that she remembered the time, that detail I'd never spoken out loud, made my chest tighten in a different way than before. Not longing, not guilt. Something closer to belonging. I sat beside her. Neither of us said much. Just the sound of the street waking up around us, the scrape of a bird pecking at the sidewalk. Her hand brushed mine on the bench. Casual, like she wasn't thinking about it. But her thumb moved slightly, just once, in a way that said she was. That was enough. Days blended into weeks. The world didn't collapse. Her son never looked at us differently. People passed us by like we were nothing more than neighbors, which, in a way, we still were. But under the surface, something had shifted. A quiet routine, built in stolen hours and unspoken acknowledgments. It wasn't grand. It wasn't perfect. It was ours. I don't remember the exact moment I stopped doubting. Maybe it was the night she poured me tea instead of coffee and said, without looking up, "You'll sleep better this way." Maybe it was the way she paused at the door one evening, her sweater sleeves pulled over her hands, and whispered, "Be careful walking home." Or maybe it was nothing as clear as that. Just the slow, steady warmth of being allowed to stay. I think about that first time in the cafe sometimes, the way she said, "You're not a kid anymore." It feels like another lifetime. Like she was handing me the start of something neither of us had words for yet. Now, sitting beside her, watching the steam rise from her tea, I realize I don't need the words. We both already understand. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?